Hey, welcome to the 2-month review where we take a giant book, chop it up into bit-sized morsels, eat those morsels, digest them, decide whether or not they taste good, if the craft was there, if there's good recipe behind them, and then move on with our lives. So I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and Brian Wood, author of Joy Time Killbox, is not here, even though he's the one who bitches about my having the same intro every time, and now that I change it up, he's not even here to appreciate it. But instead, we are joined by Kaya Stramanis from Open Letter Books. How are you doing, Kaya?
You're like the Chef Reacts of literature.
Yeah, that's exactly what it should be. By the way, I'm also dying, so if you can't hear that,
I'm in another room, so that doesn't happen. I'm doing as well as could be expected for the holiday season. I am enjoying stale cookies that have been out for a week and not wearing a bra. And I mean, what more can a girl want?
I'm guzzling Gatorade Zero, which is an appropriate name since it does zero things to help me feel better. But there we are.
Sponsor him.
Yeah, give us some bling or whatever it is that y'all do. So it's too bad that Brian's not here because there's like two intro sports things I wanted to tell him about. One is that Brian and I are playing in fantasy football in the semifinals in our money league, and I'm kicking the shit out of him as of this morning. That probably will not hold, but it's always fun to taunt someone. And then second, as of this morning, the Los Angeles Dodgers are projected to win about 140 games a year now that they have every good player under the sun. And I know that anyone who's a baseball fan is distraught about this. Whereas I, on the other hand, have entered my villain mode of existence for 2024, especially, in which I'm embracing evil. And I hope that they win every game and win the next 7 World Series. And everyone gets so discouraged that they just stop watching baseball. That would be very funny if Ohtani and Yamamoto just broke baseball for everyone.
And see, money can buy happiness, and it's fine if it's someone else's money that can buy you villain era happiness.
I froze. The Wi-Fi here is pretty shaky, so I have to see how this works.
That's on brand for any Stramanis property household.
Very
it's
true.
Very on brand.
So this book, Kaya, which you know nothing about, is
that's another reason why it's a shame Brian's not here, because he's actually read it.
Yeah, he's read words of it and knows what it is.
I know it's by Ed Park.
Same bed, different dreams by Ed Park. And given that I've been in a fever state for 3 days and having the most insane batshit experiences when I close my eyes and finally fall asleep, I've had wild dreams, but the one that I had this morning is so insane that I must share it with everyone because I don't even know how to describe this. I wrote it all down, so it's in my notes. I'm just going to read my notes, okay?
Excellent.
And since this is a book about dreams, I feel like this can violate that whole nobody cares about dreams. Dreams are what's not on the internet, and I can guarantee you this is not on the internet. Okay, so in my dream, a cop was talking to me about trying to write a poem called 5 Minutes with Alice. It was about an experience he had in which you went inside a romantically lit room on a bed, and the chamber opened at your side, and Alice, a squirrel, came in, saw a person was there, screamed and farted the worst fart in history, and flew around the room farting and screeching for 5 minutes. We're recording. Okay, we'll go wipe it off. We're recording.
That sounds like performance art.
It's pretty wild. I didn't see it. He just described it in detail. And and I thought, yeah, that would be terrifying if a squirrel is like farting awful farts and screeching around a room for 5 minutes. That's not what you expect. That's not what anyone expects. So
it's not what you expect. It's not what you want either.
So this is going to be a short and sweet episode. It's a short section. We only covered 50 pages from 154, I think, to 206, something like that. And it is 3 sections that we went over. 2 of them are 23-33 sections, or 2, 3-33. And I'll go over those in a second. But at the end of this, if you're watching it, it's going to be relatively short. But if you're listening to this, there's a bonus section in which I talked to Andrew Merritt, aka Metafictional Meathead from Instagram, who does the podcast Life on Books with his friend Tony. And we talked about this was their book of the year. We talked about podcasting and the role of podcasters and promoting literature within the literary scene and a whole bunch of stuff. It's quite a long conversation. So that'll be tagged on here. So it doesn't matter so much if this is that short. But um, I'm just going to walk through this for anyone who's following along and using this as a sort of guide. The first section that we have today, and you asked questions along the way, Kaya. So 2333 is a series of books, to frame this for you, that Parker Jotter, this character who was in Korea, a black man in Korea, fought in Korea, his plane crashed, presumably from his perspective, because he saw a UFO, chased after it, crashed. He was in a POW camp with a guy who had the initials KPJ for the Korean Provisional Government, which is a huge part of this book. And he gave Parker Jotter a Zippo lighter that has KPJ inscribed on it that Parker kept with him for his whole life. And when Parker got back from the war, he wrote a book called 2333 that got published as like a sci-fi, pulpy sci-fi book, and was popular enough that his editor, DM Zephyr, or DM, like which initials DMZ, referring to like the Korean split, encouraged him to write more. And every book was titled 2333, but 2333 referenced something different in every single book. It could be a satellite, year, a page in a massive tome, and none of them really fit together, but people try and figure that out all the time. He wrote 5 books, and the 6th one was never published or presumably written. He also owns a electronic shop, like a Philip K. Dick character, and gives away some of his books to customers and sells them there, and so on and so forth. Questions?
This is all based on true. This part's all based. No, it's all fictional. Okay. Okay.
Nothing in this is true.
I mean, I was ready to Google this person. So
it'd be funny if there's someone who'd show up. That seems like I forgot to ask add this, but I thought that he and Levi, what's Levi's last name? Stahl. Levi Stahl used to run a website called the Library of Invented Authors or something that effect, in which they categorize or they collected all the names of invented and made up authors and books from famous works and had like a listing of them. I don't know if I'm right about that. I might be making that up, but it would have been like 10, 12 years ago. And I think Ed was involved, but it's possible this exists and Ed wasn't part of it too. But I'll try and find it. But this guy's invented.
And that's kind of a testament to, I guess, Ed's writing, and your retelling of Ed's writing is that you could just be like, oh, this is a thing that happened. And the way it's pieced together, it's like just on that edge of like unbelievable historical information enough where like it could be completely true.
Yeah. So the section we get first of his Harmony Holdings brings back one of the characters from the opening scene. So the opening scene in this book is a literary party that our protagonist Soon Sheen goes to, and there's people from his past and from Korean literary world, but literary world overall, that are there. And one of them is a guy named Monk Zingapan, which is a great Pinchonian name. And we're in this section, we're back with Monk Zingapan. It takes place in 1977, and it involves how he meets Clara Euphrates. And Clara Euphrates is not a character that we met before that I can remember. If she's in there, I just blanked it. I can't find her. But anyways, meets this woman, and she gives him a place to live because her father owns these giant buildings in New York, apartment buildings, and she finds a place for him to live in there, and he goes to work for her father's gaming company. So her father is Korean, and they have like a bunch of different things, like a holding company that has a bunch of different outlets to it, and one of them is a gaming company. So he goes to work for them, and he and Clara create this game called Valet, in which you have to park certain cars fast. It's like a card game. And if you get cars parked certain fast, but if you do them too fast, the customers will get pissed because they'll get dinged. If you're too late, they get mad, and it wins like an award. And they try and make a second version of it, and it doesn't work, and nobody likes it. And then they are hired by someone who's referred to as the Dowager. So the Dowager contacts her dad and says, based on the success of Valet 2, the one that wasn't very successful, she wants them to create a game based on 2333. on the series of books, and they're hired to create this game, and they have no instruction. Like essentially, the there's nothing that is given to them in terms of what to do. They're just supposed to make this particular game, whatever that might be. He's never read the book. They don't know what to do. There's, as I'm putting here in the Chiron section, there's no discussion of the rights. I can immediately hear anyone within like a publishing world being like, you can't just make a game based on a series of books and label it as such. Like, that is not okay. Which brings up a different question I'll get to in a second. Anyways, they work on this. It's going to have all Dungeons and Dragons is popular at the time. So they're trying to create a story type game in which you roll dice and you try and find and create, solve certain problems, create worlds that are part of this sci-fi universe. And it gets to be super complicated and nobody really enjoys it. There's a great bit in here from their conversation in which Claire is like, she's telling him about Dungeons and Dragons and how they need to be careful not to violate their copyright. Go fuck 2333's copyright entirely. And they have weird looking dice, and Monk's like, I don't get it. It's just a bunch of people talking. And she's like, it's storytelling. And he's like, I thought we were in the game business. She says, stories are games, Clara said. Games are games, Monk replied. So they had like a little back and forth on what stories and games are, and if stories are games, which runs throughout this book in terms of like the way you can approach and think about it. But before I go out with that, which open letter books would make for good D&D sort of games?
Oh, Party Headquarters.
Oh, that's interesting. Death in Spring was my first one.
Death in Spring, Party Headquarters for sure.
I can't think of a single book that they publish.
Zone.
Although not the phrase on books, that wouldn't work. That would
be Private Lives of Trees a little bit, but that's more of like a
sit around.
Yeah.
Waiting.
Yeah. Party Headquarters for sure. That's a book I haven't thought about in a very long time. It's by Gorgi Tag, or Bulgarian books.
The Shen Sui books.
Frontier would be a batshit game.
Yeah.
That would be completely batshit. You're just like, whatever it is, you're like sweeping the courtyard, and all of a sudden frogs start crawling out of the cobblestones, and they're just there. They're not like
yep.
Plot point. They're not, you don't have to do anything about it. They're just there.
Any of the Volodine books?
Yes. Oh, Bardo for sure.
Oh, I think Radiant Terminus.
Also, yeah. That would be really dark. That would be a dark, dark, dark one.
Absolutely. That's what makes it more fun.
So,
what about
all of these books sort of seem like the Bardo especially kind of seems like the what is it called? The unnamed goose game where you just like walk around and wreak havoc.
Yeah. Well, Island of Point Nemo.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a really good one by Jean-Louis Blade-Robles. That would be a great one.
Yeah.
Any of these that are like based on like creative enterprise and creative storytelling and expansive universes would be wonderful. And this was so that's essentially what they're doing. And like Monk gets way into the dice thing and these probability stuff, and like it gets to like a point where like everything's so complicated that the game is not fun to play. And then one guy comes along and is like, you know what, I can just put this in a computer. So this computer thing is interesting because computers run throughout the book too. Sunshin works for oh God, what's the name of it? I'm blanking out. His company, which we will talk about in a second, that is like sort of an amalgam of every single tech company that exists, and is like, you know, watching everything and taking care of everything, watching every gloat, and has all the algorithms and whatnot. And everything that goes into the computer and into the internet is real in some sense. And like the reference to that, like dreams are what are not found on the internet, is a line that comes up in the section too, and is kind of the opposite of that. So so in this section though, this character puts together all the possibilities into a computer, and then they have a test group with like these young kids who like they're like describing the story, and the kids are trying to do things, and you press a button and the computer will spit out what happens next. So you don't have to like sit there rolling die all the time. but it moves things from the physical to the ephemeral or to the wired. There's even a moment where the computer shorts out, but then everything's fine and it's okay. But it's sort of like feels almost like a premonition of like if everything's relying upon the internet and upon things being connected and digital and whatnot, that's maybe not the greatest situation.
Yeah.
Or,
it's coding. You're coding.
and then to this part then takes like a weird turn, which I think will come up like more specifically, not this part, but like the longer section or longer kind of plot thread will come about this later. But Monk and Clara end up boning, and she's engaged to like this Argentine Korean rich guy, and she just leaves. She leaves, and he doesn't see her in the morning, and she's just gone. And she's run off to be married on the coast at Cape Cod or whatever. And so he's like there alone, and he gets this note from presumably his boss saying the Dowager wants you to deliver the test game. We know it worked. Bring it to this apartment. They go to the apartment. He goes to the apartment. Nobody's there. He like looks around. There's like boxes as if someone's moving in or out. And then he gets knocked out and wakes up, and the whole prototype with all the papers and everything is gone, and the place is empty, and there's no record of anyone having lived there. The closest that someone used to own it that was Theo de Gras, which is the same letters as the Dowager. So that's like sort of a hint to that. So
it's wild. That's cool.
That's that part of that, and is like maybe leads to the kind of concept that we talked about at the beginning of this, of that people are after part of this game, of this series, after the last manuscript. Because in an earlier section that you haven't read, there's a moment where Parker Jotter's wife believes in these crazy ass fucking weirdo cult that the world's going to end in 67, blah blah blah. And his daughter's like, you need to write a book in which the world ends, or like, but it's saved, and then maybe that will save mom. So he's going to write the last volume of this, the Tan Gun, that will like save her. And so this manuscript is sort of mythological later on, or whatever. I'm not going to give anything away necessarily, but like is a potential manuscript that potentially has some value to people. So this is the first time we see someone trying to actively take part of this 2333 world. Okay. So that other thing that's in there that's worth noting, that's part of the connective tissue, is that Soon's daughter, Story, which is short for Astoria, she is playing a game for school called Hegemon, in which the characters have these certain like ability, like what do you call that? Where they have like the bars of like how good they are at certain attributes. Yeah. And those attributes are in this game. So like each result that you rolled came up with a key trait: grit, ESP, agility, so on. Those are all part of Hegemon. What's that?
Grit.
Grit.
Scrappiness.
Yeah, good times. Good times. I can't breathe. Okay, so before we go on to the second 2333 section is a little bit more wild, but there's an interlude called The Louse that's part of the Sins, and this is Soon Sheen's section, in which he's the narrator, and it's him and his wife, who runs a series of nail salons, and their daughter Story. And if we jump in, and they're talking about how it's time for them to finally tell a story that she was adopted, and they go through kind of the history of how they ended up adopting her. And and they're going to tell her, maybe they want to. It's been years. They keep thinking they should tell her, but they chicken out. They haven't done it yet. And they're talking about how smart she is. And this is where she says, Nora said, she told me the other day she knew what dreams are. What did she say? Everything that's not online is important. So that's fun. They talk about like a little bit of their thing, a little bit of like whether or not they're going to tell her, blah, blah, blah. But then the fun part is that she pulls out some sort of tool, it's not described at all in the way that I couldn't find any description. But basically, it's called the louse. And the louse is some sort of object in which, so this is the big description of it. She gets this at her nail salon, and she's like, we need to play with this. And she's like, is it, what is it? And he said, then I felt something warm and silky making a slow, soft journey down my chest. but Nora was facing away from me in the ink black room. We weren't touching. In the silence, I could hear the humming from the other room, the 3D printer weaving stories, enigmatic game pieces. Ah, I said, oh? Hi, Nora said, looking over her shoulder in what I took to be oblique foreplay. Do you like it? I think so. What is it? The mystery sensation now felt different, stretched thin, smooth yet clingy. It kept moving, massaging as it went. A new TOY. How does it WORK? We were spelling things out the way we used to do before Story could read. We wanted certain pieces of information to elude her. Don't THINK about it. Okay. I put my hands in her hair as the device changed shape again, purring as it burrowed between us. It's called the louse, she said. There was some grappling. The louse started moving in a different way. Nora and I were connected yet apart. Do you like it? Smile slowly. Sometimes we spoke as though reading closed caption stage directions. Blah, blah, blah. How about, she said, clicking a small remote on her wrist, this. Sighs happily. And now? Gasped audibly. The shape kept changing. The louse seemed to gain mass as it made circling motions, humming gently. So there's some sort of fucking weird ass like sex toy.
It sounds like one of those EMS like body vibrator or massagers. But the fact that it's called the louse really unsettles me because it just it's burrowing. Lice burrow.
I mean, I assume it's burrowing down there, if you know what I'm saying too. Like it starts on his chest.
Like went down his chest. But yeah, it sounds like a full body experience, like foreplay, but like a sex toy for foreplay.
So weird. So that's the most it's described. And then say that you like it. Not as vigorously. Say it. I like the louse. Say you love it. I love the louse. Louder. She put her hand on my mouth, rubbing the stubble above my lip. I love the louse. I breathed through her fingers. But what is it? A shipment arrived at the store a while back. These plain cardboard boxes that came with an order of small snail masks. I had no idea what they were. I kept throwing them out. Then Kiko told me that what they were for. There's just someone there. You're able to.
I love the louse.
Then it's like you upload a profile, which other people can download onto their louse, and then their louse can imitate you, and vice versa, anonymously. For now, that's the louse business model.
Wow.
So interesting. I like that. That's like the sci-fi sex toy. Good creation. Down for it.
Any other sex toy by any other name would be.
I mean, it would be amazing. So taking this to its extreme, essentially, you have this device that you can download someone's attributes, and then it would imitate their performance on you, which is sounds like probably something that's going to be around in a few minutes. Yeah. So then the last section that's a little bit longer, that I don't want to go into too much detail with because I'll need Brian here to really crack through this.
Well, real quick, there are things like that exist. God, I remember it was probably like almost 20 years ago, but there was some like 60 minutes type documentary, like a 1 hour documentary on television where it was talking about like AI or like not sex toys necessarily, but that people have like way long ago developed computer games or things where like if one partner is serving overseas and the other partner is not where they are, they can like one partner can like connect the things to their body like nodes or something, and then the other partner can type like insert commands, and then but this was like 20 years ago, so it's like very basic. Where
I don't think that's nearly as advanced as some of the stuff that's in my secret drawer. But there's things.
No. Well, your secret drawer isn't 20 years old, so
no. But like, there are so many things you can do on your phone that interact with objects.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you're like, oh, this sounds like something someone will develop in a minute. It's like
this seems more like autonomous.
Fucking louse. Ugh.
I'm there for it. So last section is Man in Korean Costume, 1985 through 1980. The numbers are specifically backwards there. And it starts with a letter to Tina from DM Zephyr, in which we find out, so Tina is Parker Jatter's daughter. And Parker, I believe, has passed away. And she's writing to her daughter and is like explaining, like, I never got in touch with him. I don't know where he went. But then he was skimming. No, he's still alive, I guess. I think. God, I'm blanking out now. My brain is not working. Oh yeah, he's alive. So he's alive, but she's writing to Tina because she read a thing in the Boston Herald that there was a guy in Buffalo that went around shooting black people and then tries to stab Parker and hits his Zippo lighter and he lives. This letter is from, what year is this from? 1985, so August 12th, 1985. So she writes to Tina and says all these things about who she is. She's like, I don't think he knew that I was black or a woman. He just refers to the editor as DM Zephyr all the time and never acknowledges that. And I think even in his section he does use he as the pronoun, but it's Dorothy or dot M Zephyr, so DM Zephyr. And then so she's written this letter and she's like, here's some pages I found. He had sent something to her at her old office. She works for a new publishing company that doesn't do those sort of books. It came to her. It's kind of it's a diary of when he's in the medical center after recovering from being stabbed, and his hand is all fucked up, and he's trying to write. And one of there's two doctors are Dr. Sorrow, who doesn't want him to do anything and to recover, and then Dr. Sin, who wants him to wild word, where he just makes up things and writes continually. So he's running like a diary of different stuff that's in here about his UFO experience, about any sorts of things, about wanting to read how Dr. Sin wants to read his books. Turns out that his Dr. Sin's son has read his books and is excited about them, so on and so forth. Goes on with that for a while, and then talks about the people who help him. And then let me see if there's anything else that's really key for this, because I'm losing my voice really quickly. Talking about making up the names, and this is the part that's important. So he tells them that he invented the name for the Buffalo Sabres, that there was a contest when the Sabres were becoming a hockey team. They wanted to name them, and a Sabre was the plane that he flew in Korea, and the Sabre is also a blade. And since they're skating, he's like recommended the Sabres, which then becomes the name of the team. And there's a funny bit where they're like, Sabres skate to a 2-2 tie. I read aloud. Don't you love how they use that verb, Doc? Skate. Like the boys went out and did a few figure eights and came in for hot chocolate. And then it references that the book that Dr. Sin's son read was called 2333, The Louse. So, and it turns out that they had crossed paths earlier in a sequence that we saw. So he has written all this stuff, and we'll break this down in later sections when we get more into his history and into his past. I don't think I could do much more without really tearing myself up. So do you have any questions about that section before I do like a line of the week?
I do. So does it explain why it's called 2333?
Oh, that's in an earlier section. So he just said he chose it as a random sci-fi sounding number. And then his daughter's like, no, that's mom's birthday. It's February 3rd, 1933.
Because I mean, when you say it 2333, it sounds like 2666.
It is supposed to be.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, I talked about that on the first podcast, which you listened to. Yeah. Yeah, so he does. I did find the part where he says, truth is, I didn't mean to use it in every book. They're asking about why he chose that title. Why do all the stories take place in the future? I explained how the number meant different things in different books. And one is the time of day a crime takes place. Military time, 2333. 11:33 at night, he made a note. But why that specific number? Truth is, I didn't mean to use it in every book, but the editor at Neutron, a fellow named Zephyr, liked it in the title, so I found fresh ways to use it after that. That's where we now know that that's not a male, it's a female.
Yeah.
And it talks a little bit about being in, recovering in Tokyo, how he like got out of the war and like what went on there. It's generally pretty interesting because he's going to become more of a character in terms of like what his sort of role is in this.
You mentioned UFO experience.
Yeah, he sees a UFO in Korea and follows it, and that's when he crashes and gets
Okay.
at the beginning.
I want to read this book, Chad.
Well, you can. So I guess here's my line of the week. This one's like obtuse compared to usually the ones that I choose. No, actually, I'll choose two. This one's more obtuse, but he's talking about reading the book, one of the books, The Return to Tyson, which is one of the famous 2333 books that made him popular. And he's talking about how this guy gets assassinated after a long trek from Tyson's wintry atmosphere to its sultry side. His spirit imparts to his followers a riddle. Did the straight line kill the circle? To which one of them answers, dreams are the only reality. And that did the straight line kill the circle shows up in the very beginning of this book as a reference from the mysterious writer Echo, whose book on the Korean provisional government we are reading at points in time. And my other line of the week is when he's reading 2333 Return to Tyson, ! He says the book was from 1963, but it was science fiction, so it hadn't dated much. It was just as bad or as good as the day it came out. The least believable part was that everyone used the metric system. So for next week,
say you like the louse.
I love the. I would lie in bed with the louse for innumerable hours, and if anyone wants to judge me for that, go right the fuck ahead. I have no shame. I'm there for it. You give me a louse for Christmas, and I'm gonna be a happy man in 2024. My villain era will be complete. Tomorrow, for next Thursday, we're going up through 256. We'll know the outcome of my fantasy battle with Brian, so we can banter about that. He should be back. Hopefully, I'll be alive still. If not, so long. Farewell. It's been a good run.
Thanks for all the fish.
What's that?
Thanks for all the fish.
So, yeah. And till then, rate, review, listen to Andrew. We'll be on in 2 seconds. We'll be back with him to talk about podcasting and his interview and meeting with Ed Park.